Late in the afternoon, Grace Harper sat at her desk, staring at the cream-colored invitation in front of her. Ridgefield High School 50th Anniversary Reunion. The gold lettering glimmered softly in the fading light of the setting sun. Grace lifted the card, turning it over in her hands. When her eyes landed on the name of the host, something in her expression shifted ever so slightly. Madison Reed. Saying the name out loud, she felt memories from 30 years ago come flooding back like an unstoppable tide. 1995, Ridgefield High School, 11th grade classroom. Hey, Grace Harper. What, too broke to pay for lunch again? Madison Reed's voice cut through the classroom. It was break time, and every pair of eyes turned toward Grace. Sitting by the window, she didn't lift her head. Her vocabulary book lay open on the desk, and she quietly ran a highlighter across the page. Oh, ignoring me now? You can hear me, can't you? Madison stepped right up to Grace's desk. Behind her, Emily Ross followed with a faint, knowing smirk on her face. Madison, just leave her alone, came a small voice from the back. It was Sophie Allen, but Madison didn't even glance her way. You're in the top 10, but you can't even buy lunch? That's hilarious. She snatched the vocabulary book out of Grace's hands. The classroom went dead silent. Then Grace slowly raised her head. Give it back. Her voice was calm but firm. There wasn't a trace of fear in her eyes. What? Are you seriously giving me orders right now? Madison scoffed, lifting the book high above her head. Grace stood up from her seat, meeting Madison's gaze without flinching. I said give it back. It's mine. That quiet confidence only fueled Madison's anger. Grace had no money, no friends, nothing to her name. And yet she met Madison's glare without flinching, as if their worlds weren't miles apart. That calm defiance made Madison furious. It wasn't pity she felt, but something much closer to envy. Hey, Madison. The teacher's coming. Madison rolled her eyes. Whatever. She flung the book out the window. Hey. Grace ran to the window. But the vocabulary book had already fallen 3 floors down into the flower bed. Rain was pouring outside. The notebook she had spent months organizing was getting soaked in the rain. Someone shouted from across the classroom, and Madison giggled as she returned to her seat. Emily followed, laughing along. Grace stood there, gripping the window frame. Her hands were trembling white, but not a single tear fell. After school, in the garden, rain poured down as Grace knelt by the flower bed, reaching for her drenched notebook. Her hair clung to her cheeks, the pages dripping black with ink. Grace. Sophie walked up to her, holding out an umbrella. It's okay, Sophie. I can rewrite it. Grace held the soaked notebook close to her chest and smiled. But her smile looked painfully bittersweet. Why does Madison keep doing this to you? Isn't that going too far? Sophie asked softly. I guess she just can't stand that I don't back down. Grace said quietly, gazing up at the classroom window. Summer, 1996 senior year. Hey, Grace Harper. Which college are you applying to? Madison Reed walked over, holding a stack of college applications. The classroom buzzed with talk about exams and admissions. Grace didn't answer. You're not saying you're not going to college, right? You're in the top 5 of the class. Her voice dripped with mockery. Emily Ross chimed in from beside her. Come on, Madison. Do you know how expensive tuition is? How could she afford it? The room fell silent. Grace kept her eyes on her book, but her hand froze, unable to turn the page. Oh, really? Then what's the point of studying so hard if you can't even go to college? A few students snickered. From by the window, Ethan Brooks suddenly stood up. Hey, Madison. Cut it out. His tone was low and firm. Madison looked at him and shrugged. What? I was just asking. She went back to her seat. But her words had already sunk deep into Grace's chest. That afternoon, in the third-floor restroom, Madison stood in front of the mirror, applying lip gloss. Beside her, Emily watched with a small, satisfied curve at the corner of her lips. Madison, wasn't Ethan so cool earlier? When his voice got all low like that. Madison's hand paused. Yeah? But you know what's weird? Emily said, pretending to think. Why do you think Ethan stood up for Grace? Don't you find that kind of strange? She spoke a beat later than usual. Enough to sound casual, but with a hint of mischief underneath. Madison snapped her lip gloss shut. No idea. Maybe Ethan's just being nice. But she knew. She knew exactly where Ethan's eyes had been. Every break, every lunch period. His gaze always drifted toward the window. Toward Grace Harper. No matter how sweetly Madison smiled. No matter how she tried to get his attention. Ethan was always looking somewhere else. Madison, Grace is coming. A classmate whispered quietly. Grace's footsteps echoed from the hallway. Madison's eyes turned cold. In the corner of the restroom sat a bucket that had just been used to mop the classroom floor. It was filled with dirty water. Emily. Madison gestured with her eyes. Emily hesitated for a moment, but soon picked up the bucket. Grace walked into one of the stalls. The sound of the lock clicking shut. Madison slowly lifted the bucket filled with murky mop water. And without hesitation, she poured the filthy water over the top of the stall. Ah! Grace's scream echoed through the restroom. The dirty water soaked her from head to toe. Bits of mop debris clung to her uniform. Hee 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 hee. The laughter of Madison, Emily, and a few other kids bounced off the restroom walls. Oops, sorry. My hand must have slipped. Madison's voice didn't sound sorry at all. Grace couldn't move inside the stall. Her whole body reeked. Dirty water dripped down her face. Hey, let's get out of here. Emily grabbed Madison's arm and pulled. The kids giggled as they rushed out of the restroom. Grace was trembling inside the stall. Why did she have to be treated like this? What had she done wrong? Tears streamed down her face. They mixed with the dirty water and fell to the floor. Grace? Grace. Sophie's voice called out. The sound of the restroom door opening. Grace, what happened? Oh my God. Sophie pieced together what had happened from outside the stall. The dirty water pooled on the floor, the bucket, and Grace, shaking. Come out, Grace. Let me help you. Sophie pulled off her PE shirt and handed it to Grace. Grace took off her soaked uniform and put on the PE shirt. Are you okay? Sophie asked. Grace nodded, but her eyes were empty. Sophie, what did I do wrong? Grace's voice trembled. Nothing, Grace. You didn't do anything wrong. Not a thing. Sophie wrapped her arms around Grace. Grace cried quietly in Sophie's embrace. These incidents continued throughout their school years. They deliberately spilled her lunch tray to stain Grace's skirt. They hid her shoes. They threw her pencil case in the trash. Madison probably didn't even remember. To her, it was just entertainment to pass the time. But for Grace Harper, those years were hell. 1997, graduation day. Sophie grabbed Grace's hand. Grace, the teacher said she'd look into scholarships for you. If you get scholarship, you can go to college. But Grace shook her head. Sophie, I need to work at home. Mom can't handle it alone. But, it's okay. I'm okay. Grace smiled. But Sophie could see the pain hidden behind that smile. Outside the graduation ceremony, all their friends were receiving congratulatory flower bouquets for college acceptance. Madison held a lavish bouquet, taking pictures with her friends. Ethan Brooks stood beside her. Grace walked out through the school gate alone. When she looked back, the school had become a place that no longer had anything to do with her. Grace. Someone called out. It was Ethan Brooks. He reached into his pocket to pull out a small envelope. But when he heard Madison calling him from a distance, he tucked it back in. Never mind. Just take care. Ethan said that and turned away. Grace quietly watched his retreating figure. 2025, present day. Grace emerged from her memories and let out a deep sigh. 30 years had passed. That poor girl from back then no longer existed. Grace now lived a life where she didn't have to bow her head to anyone. Looking down at the invitation again, Grace slowly picked up her phone. "I'll be attending." After sending the brief reply, Grace gazed out the window. In the distance, the city's buildings were bathed in twilight. Now, it's time to see their faces again. A faint smile spread across Grace's lips. What that smile meant, no one could know. The location written on the invitation caught her eye. Hotel Lumiere Sky Lounge. Grace nodded quietly. Hotel Lumiere Sky Lounge, 7 p.m. The Sky Lounge at Hotel Lumiere, located in the heart of Manhattan, was filled with the glow of magnificent chandeliers. From 30 floors up, the glittering cityscape stretched out beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. Hotel Lumiere was one of New York's most exclusive 5-star luxury hotels. The kind of place where Fortune 500 CEOs closed billion-dollar deals over drinks. Where Hollywood celebrities stayed during Fashion Week. Where a single night in the presidential suite could cost more than most people made in a month. It was the ultimate symbol of wealth and power. The minimum rental fee for the Sky Lounge alone was well over $50,000. Reservations were so popular they filled up 6 months in advance. When Madison chose this place for the reunion, all their friends were impressed. People kept saying things like, "Madison's in a whole different league. Just being able to set foot in this place made tonight feel special." Classmates began arriving one by one. "Oh my God, it's been forever. You look exactly the same." Excited voices erupted throughout the room. Some faces they hadn't seen in 30 years. Others they'd kept in touch with through social media. But everyone had dressed up especially for tonight. Women carrying designer handbags. Men exchanging business cards. The venue quickly became a stage for showing off success. "I sent my kid to boarding school last year. Phillips Exeter." "Oh really?" "Mine's at La Rosie in Switzerland." Someone bragged about their child getting into an Ivy League school. Someone else about the Tribeca penthouse they'd just bought. Another about their recent promotion. They were all 47 now. But somehow the atmosphere felt just as juvenile as high school. Then the entrance lit up. Madison Reed walked in with her husband Ethan Brooks on her arm. Madison stepped into the room in a perfectly cut tweed jacket, the kind that didn't need a label to announce its worth. The smooth leather of her bag caught the light, subtle, but unmistakably expensive. Ethan was in a tailored suit, still showing off his handsome looks. The two walked in leisurely, like actors on a red carpet. "Wow, Madison. Oh my God, Ethan. It's been so long." Friends swarmed around the couple. Madison and Ethan had reconnected in college after high school graduation, and married in their late 20s. Madison ran an interior design business. Ethan owned a real estate consulting firm. "Madison, you haven't changed at all. Still gorgeous." "Oh stop. I mean, we're getting older. But I do take care of myself. Regular dermatologist visits and Pilates, you know." Madison played modest, but her eyes were full of pride. "Ethan, business must be going well?" "Business is going well enough. Opened another office in Soho this year." People around them were impressed by Ethan's answer. "You guys are doing so well. You two really are in a different league." Emily sidled up next to Madison. She was getting subcontracting work from Madison's interior design company. 30 years had passed, but Emily's position remained the same. If Madison had been the queen bee in high school, Emily was her right hand. Always backing Madison up, always agreeing with whatever Madison said. It was still the same now. She barely made ends meet with the scraps of work Madison threw her way. So she had to smile in front of her. But when Madison wasn't around, Emily was different. That woman ruined my life. Back in school, and now. Emily was the one who trash-talked Madison behind her back. In group chats. On phone calls. Whenever she met other friends. Emily bad-mouthed Madison. But in front of Madison herself. She followed her around like a puppy. She pretended to be friendly on the outside. But jealousy boiled inside. She was popular even back in school. Married well too. She's just so damn lucky. Actually, not lucky. Shameless, more like. Emily forced a smile as she lifted her wine glass. As the evening warmed up, Madison raised her wine glass and said, "By the way, I heard Grace Harper's coming tonight?" The room fell silent for a moment. Grace Harper? What's she even doing these days? Someone asked. Madison shrugged. Who knows? She didn't even go to college. Probably just living an ordinary life. There was a subtle mockery in Madison's voice. Really? She was so smart though. Being smart doesn't guarantee success. You need the right background. Emily chimed in. A few friends giggled. Sophie stood in the corner with an uncomfortable expression. She'd kept in touch with Grace through their early 20s. But at some point, they'd lost contact. She wondered how Grace was doing. But she didn't like the way they were talking about her. Still, if she was planning to come, she could have at least reached out. It was kind of surprising. When she suddenly said she'd attend, Madison said, "But is she really coming? Won't she feel out of place?" Why would she? It's a reunion, right? Madison smiled, but the smile felt cold. Just then, the doors to the venue opened. Grace Harper walked in. She wasn't wearing a fancy dress or carrying a designer bag. Simple navy blouse, beige pants, and neatly styled hair. But her stride was confident and steady. Every eye in the room turned to Grace. Wait, isn't that Grace Harper? It is. Wow, she's changed. Murmurs began. Grace walked in slowly and nodded quietly in greeting. It's been a long time. Her voice was low and calm. But there was a weight to her presence that everyone could feel. Madison looked Grace up and down, wineglass in hand. Huh, she looks better than I expected. Madison's expression hardened slightly. Oh my God, Grace. It's been forever. Emily said with exaggerated enthusiasm. Yeah, it has. Grace replied calmly, looking around for an empty seat. Grace. Sophie waved from a corner table. Her face lit up with genuine warmth. Come sit here. There's room. Sophie patted the seat next to her. Grace smiled softly for the first time when she saw Sophie. Sophie, it's so good to see you. I know. How long has it been, really? The two women clasped hands warmly. Sophie's eyes glistened with emotion. She could hardly believe she was seeing the friend she'd lost touch with over 20 years ago. As Grace sat down next to Sophie, the atmosphere in the room shifted subtly. Madison and Emily's glamorous crowd on one side. Grace and Sophie sitting quietly on the other. Though she was seated at a corner table, there was an elegance to Grace's every movement. The way she pulled out her chair. How she set down her bag. Even the way she sat. Madison watched her with a strange feeling. She'd dressed so simply. So why did she exude such natural grace? Madison set down her wine glass and suddenly started speaking in French. So Grace, what have you been up to lately? Her French was fluent. Friends around them giggled. Oh wow, Madison, your French is amazing. Emily said admiringly. Of course. I got my MBA at INSEAD in France. Lived in Paris for 2 years. Madison said proudly. Then she turned back to Grace. Grace, do you speak French? It was less of a question and more of a taunt. Grace looked at Madison for a moment. Her expression remained unreadable. A little. A calm response. Really? Where did you learn? A friend sitting nearby asked. All eyes remained fixed on Grace. Self-taught. Just picked up a bit here and there. A few people burst into laughter at Grace's answer. Self-taught? Oh, how impressive. The compliment dripped with sarcasm. Madison wore a satisfied expression. Just as she thought. Grace Harper was living an ordinary life. Self-taught French. How good could she really be? But as Madison watched Grace's demeanor, she grew increasingly irritated. Why is she acting so confident? She must have been living some ordinary, insignificant life. The atmosphere grew more uncomfortable. The group continuing their conversation in French, and Grace sitting quietly. Tension began to fill the room. Sophie held Grace's hand tightly and wouldn't let go. She could hardly believe the friend she'd wondered about for over 20 years was right in front of her. Grace, what have you really been doing all this time? I've been so curious. Sophie's voice was filled with sincerity. Me? Just working hard, getting by. Grace smiled calmly as she answered. She asked Sophie, what about you? You're a nurse, right? Yeah, I'm working as an RN at Johns Hopkins now. Sophie said, a bit bashful. Nurse manager was one of the highest nursing positions. But Sophie remained humble. That's amazing, Sophie. No, it's not. I just kept my head down and worked. And somehow ended up here. The two women talked quietly. Their conversation looked warm and natural. At the table across from them, the flashy bragging contest continued. Madison sipped her wine while telling friends about her recent remodeling project for a Hamptons beach house. But her eyes kept glancing over at Grace and Sophie. What are those two talking about? Madison's expression hardened. Just then, the doors to the venue opened and a man walked in. He appeared to be in his late 40s, wearing a crisp suit with a hotel logo name tag. General Manager Michael Harrison. He was the general manager of Hotel Lumiere, the person who oversaw all hotel operations. He held decision-making power over all hotel contracts, venue rentals, and bids. When General Manager Harrison entered the room, Madison's eyes lit up. Honey. Madison poked Ethan's arm. Ethan quickly assessed the situation. They both jumped up from their seats simultaneously. Mr. Harrison. Madison's voice went up an octave. She bowed deeply at the waist. Ethan did the same. Good evening, Mr. Harrison. Thank you so much for accommodating us tonight. A bright smile spread across Madison's face. But the smile felt forced, overdone somehow. Ah, Ms. Reed, Mr. Brooks. Harrison nodded lightly. He was polite, but his manner was dry. Thank you for choosing our hotel for your reunion. No, thank you. Hotel Lumiere really is something special. The facilities, the service, everything is top-notch. Madison gushed with endless compliments. Ethan chimed in from beside her. About next week's bid, if you have time. We'd love to meet with you. Ethan said carefully. His voice was tinged with desperation. Ah, that project is still under review. We'll be in touch. Harrison's response was brief and clear. Yes, yes. Please call us anytime. We'll do our absolute best to. Madison kept smiling as she spoke. But Harrison had already turned his attention elsewhere. The classmates watched this scene unfold, whispering among themselves. I've never seen Madison act like that before. Must be for business. That guy's the hotel's general manager. Oh wow, so he's really important. Emily stood next to Madison, bowing along with her. But inside she thought, look at that. Even Madison has to grovel to someone. Beads of sweat formed on Madison's forehead. The truth was, her interior design company was in crisis. Several major projects had been cancelled in quick succession, and their financial situation had deteriorated rapidly. They were on the brink of bankruptcy. Ethan's real estate consulting firm was in the same boat. A bad investment had resulted in massive losses, and now they were buried in debt. This Hotel Lumiere remodeling bid was their last hope. That's why they'd gone out of their way to book this hotel for the reunion. To make a good impression on the general manager. General Manager Harrison turned his gaze away from Madison and Ethan and looked around the venue. His eyes found Grace Harper sitting at a corner table. Suddenly, his expression completely changed. Harrison quickly straightened his posture and walked toward Grace. His pace quickened. "Ms. Harper." His voice rang out across the room. The venue fell silent in an instant. When Harrison reached Grace, he bowed deeply. Not 90 degrees. Deeper. More respectful. "Ms. Harper, thank you for taking the time to be here today. I wanted to greet you personally." His manner was completely different from how he'd treated Madison and Ethan. His voice was filled with respect and nervous energy. Grace nodded quietly. "You've been working hard, Mr. Harrison. Thank you for the excellent preparations today." "Not at all. It's my duty. If there's anything uncomfortable, please let me know at any time." Harrison remained bowed. "Everything's fine. I'll just enjoy the evening." "Yes, Ms. Harper. Please, relax and enjoy yourself." Harrison bowed deeply once more. Before stepping back. Before leaving, he bowed toward Grace one more time. The doors closed. In that moment, the room erupted like a bomb had gone off. Wait, what did he just call her? Ms. Harper? Grace Harper? No way. Does she own this hotel? Madison stood frozen in place. Her hand holding the wine glass trembled, turning white. Ethan was the same. His face had gone pale. Emily's mouth hung open. Wait, what? What's happening? Sophie looked at Grace with a shocked expression too. But Grace's face remained calm as ever. Madison slowly turned to look at Grace. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. The owner? No way. That can't be. The tables turned. The room buzzed with conversation. Every classmate's eyes turned to Grace at once. The owner? Of Hotel Lumiere? No one could believe it. Just then, Emily moved quickly. She jumped up from beside Madison and walked briskly to Grace's table. Her steps were hurried. "Oh my God, Grace. It's been so long." Emily's voice suddenly went up an octave. It wasn't the same voice that had been mocking Grace from beside Madison just moments ago. "I've missed you so much. We should stay in touch." Emily sat down next to Grace and even grabbed her arm. A bright smile spread across her face, as if they'd been close friends their whole lives. Then other classmates swarmed toward Grace. "Grace, oh my God, this is incredible. Really? How did this happen? Hotel Lumiere. Wow, this is amazing. You're the most successful person from our class, aren't you?" The sounds of chairs scraping and tables being moved filled the room. People who'd been gathered around Madison just moments ago suddenly migrated to Grace's side. Madison was left alone at her table. The space around her was empty. Everyone who'd been by her side just minutes ago had vanished. Madison sat frozen, wine glass in hand. Her hand trembled slightly. Ethan sat next to Madison, but his gaze was fixed on Grace. "Grace, what do you do at the hotel? If you're the owner, that's a huge deal, right?" Friends pelted Grace with questions as if nothing had happened before. The compliments kept coming. Grace remained composed. "I just worked hard for a long time and ended up here." Her voice was calm, not boastful, not falsely modest. Natural. "Wow, that's really amazing. You didn't even go to college. How did you manage to?" Someone said it thoughtlessly, but the air grew awkward for a moment. Grace smiled. "Hard work pays off." That brief answer silenced everyone. Grace's demeanor was unwavering, graceful and confident. Madison watched from a distance. Her lips quivered. That's Grace Harper? The girl she'd bullied. The one she'd poured dirty water on. The one she'd looked down on for being poor. How could that Grace Harper be so confident now? Madison's chest tightened. Just then, the doors opened again. A tall man walked in. He appeared to be in his early 50s, wearing an impeccable suit. His hotel name tag read, General Manager, Jean-Luc Dubois. The room fell silent in an instant. The people who'd been chattering in French moments ago went quiet. Tension hung heavy in the air. Jean-Luc looked around the room and spotted Grace. A warm smile spread across his face. He walked briskly toward Grace. Then he extended his hand respectfully. Jean-Luc greeted her politely in French. He said it was an honor to have her here tonight and asked if everything was to her satisfaction. Grace rose from her seat and clasped his hand. Then she responded in fluent French. She thanked him, said everything was perfect, and told him his team had done an excellent job as always. Grace Harper's French pronunciation was flawless. Smooth and elegant. As natural as a native speaker. The two continued their conversation in French. Grace spoke without any hesitation. She conversed with Jean-Luc as an equal. Or perhaps from an even higher position. The classmates watched the scene with their mouths hanging open. Emily just blinked. Madison, who'd been showing off her French just moments ago, had gone pale. Jean-Luc bowed politely once more in French before stepping back, wishing her a pleasant evening. The doors closed. Silence filled the room. Then it erupted. Oh my God. Did you hear her French? Unbelievable. That guy's the French general manager. Grace really does own this place. Madison couldn't take it anymore. She jumped up from her seat and walked toward Grace. Her hand holding the wine glass was trembling. Hey, Grace Harper. Madison's voice was sharp. The room fell silent again. What is all this? Are you running some kind of scam? Grace slowly looked up at Madison. What are you talking about, Madison? Hotel owner? That's ridiculous. You didn't even go to college. How could you possibly get a position like that? Madison's voice grew louder. Her face flushed red. There must be something. Either you have connections or… Madison, stop it. Ethan stood up and grabbed Madison's arm. But Madison shook him off. Why? Am I the only one who thinks this is weird? Doesn't anyone else find this strange? A high school graduate owning a hotel. Madison was losing control. A mixture of shame, jealousy, and humiliation exploded out of her. Then someone muttered quietly, "That's why she's failing." Right. She's been like that since high school. Murmurs rippled through the room. This time, they were directed at Madison. Isn't this karma catching up with her? Exactly. What goes around comes around. Madison looked around. The same people who'd been praising her just 30 minutes ago were now mocking her. That's when Emily stepped forward. Madison Reed, don't you think you're going too far? Madison stared at Emily. Her expression was one of disbelief. What did you say? You've been like this since high school. Bullying Grace. Always putting her down. Emily's voice grew louder. She was desperate to distance herself from their past actions. You poured dirty water on her in the restroom. You threw her notebook out the window. The room buzzed with conversation. What? That happened? Oh my God, really? Emily didn't stop. You spilled her lunch tray on purpose. You hid her shoes. You bullied her constantly. Emily Ross, you. Madison shouted, but Emily couldn't stop now. I only went along with it. Because I was scared of you. But you were the truly cruel one. The classmates' gazes turned cold. Madison really did all that? Oh my God, that's terrible. No wonder she's in this state now. Madison looked around. Everyone was condemning her. The venue was no longer a reunion. It was a courtroom. Ethan placed his hand on Madison's shoulder. Madison, let's go. But Madison couldn't move. Tears streamed down her face. Grace remained seated. Her expression was calm. She said nothing. That silence felt even heavier. After the reunion. As Grace left the venue after the reunion ended, friends swarmed around her. Grace, give me your number. Let's grab dinner sometime. Let's stay in touch, okay? Friends competed to hand her their business cards. These were the same people who'd dismissed Grace. When the reunion started, Grace smiled quietly and accepted only a few cards. Then she walked over to Sophie. Sophie. Grace pressed her business card into Sophie's hand. Let's stay in touch from now on. Promise. Sophie's eyes grew misty. Yes, definitely. The two embraced warmly. As Grace left the venue and walked down the corridor, hotel staff members stopped in unison. Good evening, Ms. Harper. Have a good evening, Ms. Harper. As she passed through the lobby at the elevator, every staff member bowed deeply. Grace responded with a gentle smile. The classmates following behind couldn't close their mouths. This is insane. It was all real. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Madison stood at a distance, watching the scene. Her body trembled. This can't be happening. Madison clenched her fists. That's Grace Harper. I can't accept this. Ethan grabbed her arm. Madison, let's just go. But Madison kept muttering to herself. There must be something. She has to have connections. Rich connections. Or. Her voice trembled. Petty words spilled out, but they were laced with desperation. And so that night came to an end. The next day, Hotel Lumiere owner's office. The owner's office on the 30th floor was sleek and sophisticated. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, the Manhattan skyline stretched out. Grace sat at her desk reviewing documents. Knock knock. There was a knock at the door. Ms. Harper, Madison Reed and Ethan Brooks are here to see you. It was her assistant's voice. Grace paused for a moment, then replied quietly. Send them in. The door opened. Madison and Ethan entered. Madison's face was pale. Ethan smiled awkwardly as he greeted her. Hello, Grace. I mean, Ms. Harper. Grace nodded and gestured to the sofa in front of her. Please, have a seat. Madison bit her lip as she sat down on the sofa. She'd rather die than be here. But she had no choice. The company was on the brink of bankruptcy. You're here about the bid, right? Grace spoke first. Yes, well, we wanted to. Ethan started to speak, but Madison cut him off. Our company's work speaks for itself. You can see it in our portfolio. Pride still dripped from Madison's voice. She didn't sound like someone who was asking for help. Grace looked at Madison quietly. Madison, what? There's something I want to ask you. Grace's voice dropped low. The air in the room grew heavy. Why? Did you hate me? Madison's expression hardened. I really want to know why you tormented me like that. Grace spoke slowly. Her voice didn't tremble, but the emotion behind it was palpable. Remember when you poured dirty water on me in the restroom? Madison's face went white. That day, I was devastated. I couldn't understand why I deserved to be treated that way. Grace's eyes wavered. Tears threatened to fall, but she held them back. Remember when you spilled my lunch tray? My skirt was completely ruined. Grace. Ethan said quietly, but Grace continued. And throwing my vocabulary notebook out the window. I'd spent months working on that. It was raining that day. Madison lowered her head. Her hands were trembling. I was poor. I couldn't go to college. But, Grace paused before continuing. I didn't do anything wrong. So why did you treat me that way? The room fell silent. Madison couldn't answer. She just sat there with her head down, her body shaking. Ethan looked at Madison, then bowed his head to Grace. Grace, I'm so sorry. I should have stopped it back then. His voice was filled with genuine regret. Grace let out a deep sigh. The bidding process will be fair. It comes down to merit. Grace, come prepared with your best work. That's the right way forward for both of us. Grace's voice was firm. Ethan nodded. Understood. Thank you, Grace. He stood up and helped Madison to her feet. But Madison lashed out one last time. This is all. This is ridiculous. Her voice shook. You're just showing off, aren't you? Getting your revenge? Does it make you feel superior? Madison. Ethan shouted, but Madison didn't stop. I won't accept this. Grace looked at Madison quietly. There was pity in her eyes. Madison, I don't hate you. Madison looked up. But, Grace paused before continuing, I think you hate yourself. Tears streamed down Madison's face. Ethan wrapped his arm around Madison's shoulders and walked toward the door. Madison left the room sobbing, being pulled along. The door closed. Grace stood alone in her office, gazing out the window. Her eyes were red. 30 years. She'd finally asked the question that had haunted her all those years. A few days later, it was a warm afternoon. Grace and Sophie sat across from each other at a quiet cafe in the Upper East Side. Grace, this still feels like a dream. I never imagined you'd become someone so incredible. Sophie said, holding a warm latte. Grace smiled gently. Sometimes it feels like a dream to me too. That the girl from back then made it this far. The two shared a comfortable conversation after so many years. Stories from high school. Stories of their lives. Tales from all the years they'd lived apart flowed between them. Grace set down her coffee cup and took Sophie's hand. Sophie, there's something I need to tell you. Yes? Thank you. Grace's voice trembled. In high school, if you hadn't been there, I would have given up. I really would have. Grace's eyes reddened. When they poured that dirty water on me in the restroom. You came and gave me your PE shirt and held me. If you hadn't been there, I would have broken. Tears streamed down Sophie's face. Grace, when I went to pick up my notebook. When I ate lunch alone. You were always there beside me. That meant everything to me. Grace couldn't hold back her tears either. 30 years of suppressed emotions poured out. Grace, I'm sorry. I should have done more for you. I should have protected you better. Sophie squeezed Grace's hand tightly. The two women cried quietly in the corner of the cafe. How hard it must have been. How lonely. But Grace never gave up. And now, she was here. After that, Madison Reed lost the Hotel Lumiere remodeling bid. The day she received the rejection, Madison sat alone in her office. The company eventually went bankrupt. Ethan's company met the same fate. She stared out the window, thinking, what did I do wrong? 30 years ago, the words she'd thrown around carelessly, the bullying she'd inflicted, came flooding back. Back then, it had just been for fun, to pass the time. But for Grace Harper, it had been hell. For the first time, Madison understood how cruel she had been. She slowly stood up and began packing her things. She had to start over now. From the bottom, Grace Harper's story soon reached the media. From high school graduate and janitor to Hotel Lumiere owner. Grace Harper's 30-year journey. Forbes named her one of America's most influential women leaders. She became an icon of hope for young people. At a university lecture, a student asked, Ms. Harper, how did you endure those difficult times? Grace thought for a moment before answering. I tried not to be pessimistic about my circumstances. Instead, I challenged myself. The auditorium fell silent. Being poor isn't wrong. Not going to college isn't wrong either. But if you let those things stop you, that's when it becomes wrong. Grace's voice was firm. I started as a janitor. I cleaned hotel restrooms. But while doing that work, I learned about hotel management. I observed guests. I studied service. The student's eyes sparkled. At night, I taught myself French and studied business management. Nobody noticed, but I grew every single day. Grace smiled. And I realized something. The pain from my past shaped who I am. Without those difficult times, I wouldn't be who I am today. Applause erupted in the auditorium. Everyone, before you blame your circumstances, challenge them. You're far stronger than you think. One evening, Grace stood alone on the hotel rooftop. The Manhattan skyline spread out below her. The twinkling lights were beautiful. 30 years ago, that girl who'd been drenched in dirty water. Sitting on the restroom floor crying. Now she stood above this city, among the stars. Grace whispered quietly, "Thank you," to the girl I was back then. A gentle breeze blew. Thank you for not giving up. A smile spread across her face. Life can be cruel sometimes. But for those who refuse to give up, light eventually comes. Grace Harper proved that. And today, she continues to be hope for someone else. Hearing Grace Harper's story today, we're reminded that what matters most in life isn't where you start, but where you're going. Grace started at the lowest point, but she reached the highest heights. She had no prestigious education, no wealth, no connections. But she had something more powerful, a heart that refused to quit. And through Sophie, we learn that being there for someone during their darkest times, that small act of kindness, can become the very thing that holds a person's life together. Madison's story warns us that when we mistreat others, we're not just destroying them, we're destroying ourselves. Right now, someone somewhere might be sitting on a restroom floor, crying. But remember this, those tears won't be wasted. If you don't give up, someday you'll stand above it all. No matter how difficult your past was, it doesn't define you. How you rise, that's what defines you. I hope this story resonates with you today. If it touched your heart, please subscribe, like, and turn on notifications. It's free and helps us share more stories like this. Leave a comment and let us know where you're listening from. Thank you for staying with us until the very end.